If you have multiple languages installed on your site, you'll want to know how to translate from one to another. It's possible to do this manually, but if you also have the Google Translate and Translation Management modules installed on your site, then you also have a more automated option. We'll take a look at both in this video. We'll also look at how to set fields and taxonomies to be translatable. First, I'll walk through the process of translating a node manually. As long as the content type of the node, for objects that's repository item, was set to be translatable, which we'll look at later, when you go to the admin content page, you'll see Translate as an option in the drop-down next to the node that you want to edit. You can click Translate in the drop-down, or you can click into the node itself and then click the Translate tab. Click the Add button next to the language you're translating to, in this case, French. Insert the translated text into the fields. You will only see fields here that are set to be translatable for this content type. Click Save All Translations. One important thing to note, to see your translated node, you must select its language from the Language Switcher drop-down in order to switch the website language. You'll see this warning message saying that fields that apply to all languages are hidden to avoid conflicting changes. You can ignore this message. And here I've switched to French, and I see my translated text. Now I'll walk through the process of how to add translations using Google Translate's automated translation service. Just like before, I've navigated to the admin content page, and this time I'll click Translate in the Edit drop-down menu next to the node that I want to translate. On the next screen, check the box next to the language you're translating to, in this case English. Then either click the Request Translation button, or if you're translating several nodes in a batch, click Add to Cart. I'll click Add to Cart now so that you can see what that looks like. And note that when you add to cart, you don't need to select the translation language. You can do that from the cart page. When you're done adding to cart, go to Translation Cart in the admin menu, or you can just click this cart link in the green success message. Click the language that you're translating to, and then click the Request Translation button. I can leave all of this as it is, and then I'm going to submit to provider. In the green success message, you'll see the translation is finished and can now be reviewed. Now, on some sites, you may have a manual review process set up. And in that case, you click the reviewed link, and that takes you to the job overview page, showing the translations for each translatable field. If you agree with the translation that it's correct, you click the checkbox, or you can make edits there if you need to. Once each field's checkbox is checked, you click Save as Completed. So here, because this was automatically accepted and did not need to be reviewed by a person, we can look at the object on the front end of the site. But remember that we need to change the site language in the Language Switcher dropdown to the language of the translation. And we're in English already, so that should be fine because this started in French. And now we see our English translation Now I'm going to talk a bit about translating taxonomy terms. These fields are set as translatable, but the taxonomy terms must be translated separately. They're not translated as part of the node translation process. So I'll show you briefly how to do that. First, I'm going to switch my website language back to English so that it's a little easier for me to navigate. Go up to Structure, Taxonomy, and choose the taxonomy you want to translate. I'll choose Islandora models. Click on List Terms. And note that this has to be a taxonomy that was set in the multilingual configuration to be a translatable taxonomy. Next to the term you want to translate, click Translate in the Edit dropdown. If you don't see Translate, that means the taxonomy was not yet configured to be translatable. We'll talk about that a little later. And you can see here that compound object already has a translation, but we can edit the translation here if we'd like. Unlike with nodes, you can edit a translated taxonomy term regardless of what language the site is set to in the language switcher dropdown. If this term didn't have a translation already, you'd see an Add button on that last screen instead of the Edit dropdown. You would follow the same steps as described for translating nodes. Before we end, let's take a look at how fields and taxonomies are set to be translatable. In the Admin menu, go to Configuration, Regional and Language, Content, Language, and Translation. You'll see that content is checked, as well as taxonomy term and many other things. You can ignore the others for now. Scrolling down, you'll see that the content section is broken down into content types, like homepage. When you select a content type, you'll have a couple of other settings options. Leave default language as site's default language. Leave the box for Show Language Selector on Create and Edit Pages checked. And to make things easier for translators, it's nice to check the box for Hide non-translatable fields on translation forms, but you don't have to. It does make the form much cleaner, so translators only see the fields they can edit. Scrolling down further, we get to taxonomy term. Here's where you can select the taxonomies to be translatable. Once you select a taxonomy, you'll also see the fields to translate, just like you do with the content nodes above, and you can select which fields you want to be translatable. Be sure to click Save Configuration at the bottom of the screen once your changes are made.